Hello everyone, welcome to another live hangout here at Voice Essentials. It's so good to have you joining us. If you're watching this show as a replay, hi, it's so good to have you join us in the show. Of course, so many of you watch this show in a replay because when I go live here on Mondays, Australian Eastern Standard Time at 1 p.m, we're in our Monday already, and most of you in the Northern Hemisphere are still in your Sunday nights, often quite late. So I know many of you watch the show as a replay. You are welcome. It's so good to have you in the show. Make sure, if you are watching the show as a replay, leave your comments in the description, the comment section below, and I'll be sure to chase those up as we go. But of course, so many of you are watching this show live right now. I saw that Kelly's in the show, Matt, Samuel, Bhargav, Tharundu, and of course Linda, the wonderful Linda, who will be moderating the live chat. So good to have so many of you here live, ready to go. And today we're doing a Q&A for the most part. I'm really enjoying our Q&A times together. We often, as those of you who watch the show regularly, we often have a guest on. Last week we had Karen O'Connor from Singwise. Wasn't it great to have Karen onto the show again? It had been too long since we'd had Karen on the show, and I promise not to let it go that long again, all things being equal. But it was good to have Karen join us, and that bared out in the amount of people that liked the show and watched the show. I know how much you enjoy Karen's expertise. It was good to have her on the show. Before I forget, next week we don't have a show. It's my mid-semester break next week. So I will be recording a whole range of pre-recorded videos for you all. I'm in the midst of, what's the right word? Actually, is it next week or week? Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. No, I think we do have a show next week. Now I'm getting off. Do we have a show? I need to actually have a look. Hang on a second. I think, no, we don't have a show next week. No, we don't. Oh, dearie me. We don't have a show next week. I suddenly got myself all bamboozled in the head there. We do not have a show next week. It is my mid-semester break next week. So I am pre-recording a whole heap of videos for you. We will be back in a fortnight's time, Australian Eastern Standard Time, Monday, 1 p.m, as per usual, when hopefully I'll have a better handle on what I'm doing in my own show. Just to remind you, you can still get the Voice Essentials 2 for $145 Australian dollars. But here's a little secret, and I nearly let it slip during last week's show. I had kind of expected that we'd be able to go live. Remember, I've been saying that it would go live from July 1st onwards. Well, we finished early, and instead of making you all wait an extra couple of weeks, Voice Essentials 2 is now live. The 12 new modules of learning, it's live, but the sale price of $145 Australian, $145, is still active, and it will be up until June 30, 11:59 p.m. So make sure, if you want to get $50 off, if you want to get the discounted rate, you've got to get into it now. The great thing about that is, if you do get into it now, you can start the program now, and already starting to get some really great feedback from everyone. So thank you for those pieces of feedback. So jump in, dive in. It's funny, I've had a funny kind of morning because I've taught people, I taught a student in the US, in California. I taught a student, I think he's in California. I taught a student in Rockhampton, Queensland, and I taught a student here in Brisbane, but he was online. All of my students are online currently due to coronavirus. And my Brisbane student and my Californian student, who don't know each other and almost certainly never will, both unsolicited, unbeknownst to each other, asked me to give some critical feedback about someone who they, and in this instance it had been different people, to different singing teachers that they had been observing online, and they wanted my my opinion on those teachers. And it was really, I said to my second student when he asked after it, because I spent both lessons, you know, actively, and hopefully at a really, I like to think that we maintained a professional standard with this. It was not certainly not dissing on anyone, but they wanted my view on certain things. And I said to the second student, you know, there must be something in the water to have two students so close together, because this does happen, but to have two students ask within a couple of hours of each other was quite interesting. It gave me reason to just remind us all. I thought I'd take an opportunity very briefly, because we're going to do Q&A today. So, hey guys and gals, if you've got questions, make sure you put them into the live chat, because Linda already is starting to collate your questions and getting ready so that we can answer them as actively as we can, remembering that there is a hierarchy of answering the questions. Super chat gets preference. Then we get to the questions that have relevance to today's topic. And today's topic can certainly be about, you know, critically reviewing and knowing how to do that. And then we get into all other questions. So if you really, really, really absolutely must have your question answered, then yeah, a super chat is the best way to do that. Anywho, so I thought I'd just quickly outline some things to help you, to remind us how it is best to go about critically analyzing what you are viewing on YouTube. I am not, I do not think of myself more highly than I ought, to the point where I would think that all of you only watch Dr. Dan videos on YouTube. I suspect that that is highly unlikely. And can I say, I don't want my voice, my instruction, to be the only source of vocal instruction that you seek out. And that is probably, firstly, a key point in how to identify what level of quality of the information that you are consuming online. And that is, are there other voices that have the opportunity to talk into a particular, in this case, a particular YouTube channel's output? We do that here on Voice Essentials all the time. I have guests, I don't know how many different international guests and Australian guests we've had on the channel now, but it would be up in the, it'd be well over 40 or 50. It would have to be over 50 by now. And the reason I do that is because I want you to hear other qualified voices besides mine. Why? Because I don't know it all. I do not consider myself a guru. I have gathered knowledge, but I continue to gather knowledge. And the way I'm doing that is by listening to other voices. But we also can observe that in pre-recorded videos where people in their YouTube channels will make mention of other authorities and give credit attributions. Be careful of YouTube channels where you don't hear that regularly, where I'm not saying every video has to have, you know, attribution given to, you know, other pedagogues, but listen for it. Listen for a person quoting someone else to say, this is where I learnt this, or this is where I researched this. I found this in this book, and this is the author. Listen for those attributions. That's really important. As we go forward, allow me to say that no single one of these points that I'm making is the silver bullet. There's no one check all that tells us that the channel is is something that you want to be consuming as far as the information and the education that they're delivering. But nonetheless, these are good things to be on the lookout for. You also want to go looking for the pedigree of the teacher. What is the upbringing of the teacher? Now, there are, and there always will be, ongoing debate around, you know, what's the best upbringing of the teacher? Is it to be the academic route, or is it to be the school of hard knocks route? You know, what's better? Is it better to have, you know, had that intense instruction through what would be deemed as a more classic approach to education, where you come up through university, whether you do postgrad work, or is it simply to be out on the road, learning from your mistakes essentially, and sort of figuring it out that way? I think actually there's value in both. That's where I would stand. I'm fortunate enough to have had the experience of both, and I'm not saying that, you know, a great channel, the person that's running the channel has to have had both, but what you want to go looking for is what is underpinning their delivery. And so, for example, what we can find with singing teachers who have come up through the school of hard knocks, I don't have a better way of saying that, is they can fall into, not saying, I want to be really careful here. This is not about dissing on anyone, but I'm trying to help you discern who you should be listening to and who you should not be listening to. Singing teachers who go through the school of hard knocks can fall into the trap of being a bit, what could, in a really crass kind of way, be deemed as monkey see, monkey do. And that is, I do this with my voice, and so this is how I do it with my voice, so therefore you should try to emulate how I do this with my voice. And if you do what I'm showing you exactly the same way as what I'm showing you, then that will work out well for you. That's the monkey see, monkey do approach. I personally try to approach things a little differently to that. Again, this is a very crass way of putting it. I try to approach it more from a research see, research do. And that's a little bit more, this is what we know about the human voice, and this is how it may apply to your voice. Let's explore that. And so, I know, in fact, on my channel, I do, irregularly get comments of, why don't you show us more? Show us the activities more. Well, firstly, I do show the activities, but what I try to stop short of saying is copy me. I can show you how an activity goes. I can show you how it sounds when I do it. What I want to stop short of doing is saying you should sound, or this exercise should go exactly the same way, and you should experience it the same way as me. Why? Because your morphology is different to my morphology. That is my anatomical, my biological makeup. Firstly, I'm male and you may be female. I'm, by all accounts, a tenor. You may be a baritone. And so the way the acoustics of your voice work, the mechanics of your voice work is going to be different. So be very careful of channels that only sort of present monkey see, monkey do approaches. The other thing that you want to go looking for, and this is just a final point, you want to be careful to listen for what isn't being said. Now, in the case of my 11 o'clock this morning, we actually critically analyzed a particular channel's instructional video. And I found myself regularly stopping the video and identifying not what was said, but more importantly, what wasn't said. And this is where it can be challenging for people who haven't necessarily formed a knowledge base around learning to sing. And it is difficult, I acknowledge that. And that's why it is so important to go to, you know, make sure you nominate, identify, and connect with channels, informational sources that you can trust are not purely about empire building and selling more product and getting you to you know, purely develop their specific method, if you will, because, you know, the moment you sort of zone in on a method, and you'll notice that I'm always very, very careful to not call Voice Essentials a method. I don't consider Voice Essentials the Voice Essentials suite of exercises or the pathway of learning that we've got in the online courses. It is not a method. Now you might think to yourself, well, that's just semantics, Dr. Dan. Well, possibly it is, but I play those levels of semantics simply because I do not consider myself a methodologist. The moment you zone in on a method, you have to put blinkers on. And the reason you have to put blinkers on is because, blinkers being, you know, those things that horses wear when they're racing, is because a methodologist will want you to stay in the lane of their stated method. This is how you do things. And it could be argued there is a place for that, and there have been some really effective methodologists over the years, ones like Joe Still and Seth Riggs in contemporary voice. Though Joe Still would never have claimed to have been a contemporary voice pedagogue, she claimed to be a classical pedagogue that created connection between her and speech pathology. Anyway, the point being is we're not seeking here at Voice Essentials to have you buy into a method. What I'm looking to do is create a culture where we can all learn together, me included. We can all take this journey of learning together, have other people come onto the show and teach us so that we, you know, learn. You know, every time I get excited when we have guests on the show because I know I am going to learn something in that show. I expect to learn something even in these shows, but the Q&As and what have you, but it has to be said, when we have special guests on, we're getting expert voices come on to the show, and we get to learn things together. And that's what the pathway of Voice Essentials, the online courses, are about, is helping you to step onto a pathway that you can mold to your own journey and see you develop. Now, does that mean that the journey of Voice Essentials is less? No, by no means. It actually, in my humble opinion, is more. It means you can really massage that learning to your own voice and to your own purpose of voice. Anyway, I just wanted to sort of use my experiences with my students this morning as a bit of a bounce off to kind of, we've talked about this before in our sessions together, but I wanted to sort of remind us about those things that we need to go looking for when we discern who is a good influence for us. And yeah, so there you go. And it probably is worth saying that just because, the other thing too is, just because a channel, this is like a final point, just because a channel has a fancy camera, you know, it looks pretty, maybe they're, I don't know, maybe they're sitting in front of a, you know, fang-dangled studio, that in and of itself, remember, that doesn't mean that they know what they're talking about necessarily. Equally, it doesn't mean they don't know what they're talking about. And also, just because a person is just simply sitting on their couch and giving you information about voice doesn't mean they don't know what they're talking about. For example, Karen at Singwise, she often delivers her videos sitting on a couch. that, and we all know that Karen definitely has things to teach us about voice. So, you know, the quality of the camera, the quality of the audio, that's the techie stuff. You know, that's not the information. That's not the content. Zone in on the content. You know, it's cool if it's pretty to watch or pretty to listen to, but zone in on the quality of content. That's what we're talking about when we talk about critically reviewing these sorts of things. I think that's enough about that. I really do want to get into answering some of your questions to the, as we always say, to the best of my ability, and we're going to do that right after this. Okay, so let's dive in, and I see Toku Lover 89 has given us a super chat. Thank you, Toku Lover. But I don't see a question, so I'll keep an eye out for if you put a question up, and we'll make sure that we prioritize that question for you. But thank you for the super chat. It's much appreciated. That's, you know, I actually do these shows as a lesson, one of my lesson times. So I do slot these aside for us to do, so that your support, Toku Lover 89, is really appreciated. It does all go back into the channel and helping us to continue with these. So let's dive into our questions today. From the first question from John Paul, what best drink for voice? Really, John Paul, I think one of the best drinks for voice is water. Unadulterated H2O. But how we drink that H2O is really important. Let's acknowledge that, you know, in Australia, for example, we have ready access to clean, healthy water. And so in some countries that's not readily available. So it's not always going to be water from a tap, and sometimes it's not going to be you know, easily accessible. But water is the go-to for a singer. The other thing about the water is we don't want to be, you know, chugging away on it and like drowning ourselves in water. I've got a video on the channel about, you know, hydration and water. It's one of my earliest videos. If you want to have a bit of a chuckle, go and have a look at it, because it's one of my really early ones, and it's, you know, the content's good. The delivery, well, I've been improving, let's put it that way. And the, you know, there is this school of thought out there that, you know, we should be drinking, you know, 8 liters of water a day, and that is not the medical advice going around. Can I just say, I would really caution you against that. But what we do want to do is aim for between 2 to 3 liters a day, sipping the water. So, you know, this is a, was it a 750 ml, or it might be a litre. Anyway, I look to sip this through lessons. Thanks, Mick Johnson, for your super chat. Much appreciated. So I look to sip this, you know, a couple of these at least throughout the day, and then I often have water with meals and what have you, which gets me up to my 2 litres a day, 2 to 3 litres a day. And so that's the best thing to go looking for. John Paul, you want to avoid things like alcohol when you're singing, diuretics like alcohol. Coffee and tea are no longer in the naughty list, but nonetheless they're not really in the nice list. You've got to be careful with them, especially the acidity of coffee. Be careful of that. Carbonated drinks are really actually stir up acidity and reflux and stuff, so be careful of those. And dairy, though the research does show that dairy is not the big bad thing that we thought it was. The research shows that it doesn't create as much mucus as we once thought it did. Nonetheless, people's anecdotal response, certainly my response to dairy, is to feel quite phlegmy and what have you. So I always advise, if you know dairy is a negative thing for you, then avoid it prior to singing. Do not wipe it out of your, I'm not giving the advice to remove it from your diet, because I think dairy has a whole heap of other really positive outcomes for your diet, but nonetheless, be careful of it in regards to your voice. And it just always keeps coming back to water, unadulterated water. Go looking for that. Samuel, I'm coming down here. Samuel Wedgeworth, how to belt out deep high notes when typically they are high, mixed head and chest. And not a singer, but trying. Good for you, Samuel. 1995 Bill Champlin, Chicago acoustic version, Look Away starts. Well, okay, that's a very specific example. We're not going to jump into that, Samuel. Belt, we could spend all day talking about the variety of definitions that people give to belt. There are whole doctoral theses given to the defining of belt, and I've got a colleague, and Tracy Bourne is her name. Hello, Tracy, if you on the random occasion of watching this video. Tracy did her PhD in the defining of belt, and if I'm correctly remembering, she interviewed 9 or 12 internationally respected pedagogues around the area of belt, and she asked them to define their use of belt. And it will come as no surprise, again, if I'm remembering this correctly, she got just as many varieties of definition. The idea of belt, it continues to be a high-level discussion area. So let me tell you how I use the term belt, and this is how you would interact with it in the pathway of the Voice Essentials learning process. I use the term belt as to define healthy, sustainable volume. So in the case of what you're asking, Samuel, how to belt out deep high notes when typically they are high mixed, is what we're looking for is a balance of air pressure and muscular engagement that has an acoustic value that is more often than not quite focused. Therefore, we often talk about twang as being a key ingredient of belt, which we know as being reduced airflow, but volume comes from increased subglottal pressure. And so it's all about balance. I go into this in a whole heap more detail in one of my pre-recorded videos on the channel, so some of you can go and check that out. But also in the online courses, Voice Essentials 1, we look at belt in a little bit of detail. So you could jump in there and have a look. Kelly Morrison, hello Kelly. Looking forward to our next private lesson together. Ooh, I have one. Oh, good dear. That's what's written here. Ooh, I have one. You've mentioned about hormones can impact singing. Can you talk about what they do and what a singer should do? I ask that from a premenopausal perspective. Okay, so firstly, let me see if I can, I just want to see if I can, where am I going to go? I don't think you're going to be able to see. If I go there, I'm going over here so that you can all see me going for a book on my shelf. Here it is. And so coming back to here. And so this is a good example, everyone, of what I was saying at the beginning of the show. Oh, no, that's the wrong book. That's a good book, though. I've grabbed the wrong book. This is Nancy Bose's book, Singing Guide for the Teenage Girls. There you go, Nancy. It's a free advertorial. That is not the book I'm looking for. Let me go back and see if I can find the right book. Nancy's book is very good. I'm trying to remember where I've placed the book I am in search of. And this is going to be oh, here it is. Singing Through Change. I've got so many books over there. Oh, where am I? I've got so many singing books. Grab the wrong book. So this book, Singing Through Change, is brand new. And I want to give it a big shout out. This is a great opportunity. I keep sort of, where am I going to go? This book here, ladies, can I highly recommend you going and grabbing this book, Singing Through Change, Women's Voices in Midlife, Menopause and Beyond. And it's actually written by, you can see, Kate Fraser-Neely, Joanne Bosman and Nancy Bose. If you watch the show regularly, you will know we've had all three authors on this show individually. And of course, you can see there Nancy Bose again, which is one of the books I just grabbed. This is groundbreaking work. There's not a lot of information about the female voice available to us. And there is, but not a dedicated text to talking about premenopausal, postmenopausal, and the effect of midlife and all that sort of stuff. And these ladies, and I think it is appropriate that it's women who have written on this subject. I'm just turning my aircon on because I'm getting quite warm. It's really, really great that they've having a look at this, because ladies, your hormones can have a significant impact on your voice. The general estimation is that during your menstrual cycle years, so post-puberty and pre-menopausal, that around about a third of women, 30% of women, will experience significant impacts on the condition of their voice by virtue of their menstrual cycle. The interesting thing about that is that pregnancy can play a part in the fact that, maybe before a woman has babies, if they are going to have children, can have no issues, and then they get post pregnancy, and then suddenly they are having issues as a result of their menstrual cycle. It's complex, as we all are, but women's hormones, wow. I mean, girls, you have to put up with so much, don't you, in this regard. And so can I encourage you all to go and grab this book? You'll find it. I think it's on Amazon and Book Depository and those sorts of places. Go and grab a copy because these ladies are highly regarded across the international stage, and collectively they have done a wonderful job in bringing all of that information about, which is cool. So just Kelly, just to briefly, quickly talk to that a little bit more. It's all got to do with the interplay of progesterone and estrogen and the way they peak, not only just prior to menses, that is the start of the period, but also at the point of ovulation. And it comes down to the thickening of the mucosal layers and also any retention of fluid at the surface of the vocal folds. And these are how the hormones implicate themselves on the health of the voice. I've just seen that Toku Lovers question that that you have put a question in here, Toku Lover. Oh, here we go. Because Toku Lover 89 gave us a quick super chat, which was awesome. So Chris is obviously Toku Lover. Hi, Dr. Dan, I'm a baritone, but I do know which baritone voice type my voice would fall into. The register of my voice is which baritone. Well, it's funny, Toku Lover, I wouldn't be able to tell you specifically what baritone you are or are not. Mostly because in contemporary vocal, we don't get that specific. There are in the classical descriptions, applying what we refer to as Fach, F-A-C-H, there is like a divvying up of dramatic tenor and dramatic baritone, and all these sorts of, they're actually from memory German names. But in contemporary voice, we kind of don't. We kind of stop really at bass, baritone, tenor, alto, mezzo, soprano. And as I've said many times before, I'm not overly keen, unless you are specifically looking to do ensemble work, you know, singing in, you know, groups like Voctave or pentatonics and that sort of stuff, in choirs, then knowing your specific voice type is not overly crucial for the development of your voice. And in fact, to start with, I'm more keen for you to explore just your own anatomy and your own facility, and allow your technique to develop. And as a result, you may even find that what you thought your voice was settles into sometimes slightly different parameters. So that'd be where I'd be steering you first. Laurie in Japan. Cool, good to have someone from Japan with us, I'm suspecting. I have a question. I'm struggling with too much air and too much throat tension. Well, the reason you're struggling with too much throat tension will be because you've got too much air, I would dare say. Even though the sound of resonance has improved, any advice? Go looking to alleviate and learn to alleviate breath flow rates, which in turn will hopefully reduce your subglottal pressure rates, which in turn will reduce your throat engagement response, which releases tension, and hopefully you'll then see some improvements across the board. And that's where developing a greater sense of ease comes from our singing. There is such a big kinesthetic development that we need to go through as singers, is becoming aware of all of what is often, to start with, very subtle changes in our vocal stature. And so, you know, again, the Voice Essentials process and pathway will lead you along learning those skills. Mr. Dra 88. It is FACH. I've just seen Cockney Rebels. It's FACH, everyone. Not the other way around. Mr. Dra 888. If you are a baritone, well, we've got baritone questions today. If you are a baritone, can you really increase your vocal range past that with enough practice and lessons, or are you just stuck with what you got? You are stuck with what you are born with, but what we are born with is not what we will be stuck with. Now let me explain. I cannot, you know, as a vocal pedagogue, as a singing teacher, and no matter how skilled I become in my outworking of that profession, I cannot change your anatomy. I cannot change your biology. Your DNA determines, in so many respects, your voice type. But what I can do is help you to explore and discover and access areas of your biological instrument that you may not have been accessing prior. And that's where good technique comes in. It's in the development and the skill acquisition of good technique that it empowers the voice to do things that it was not able to do before. It is misleading and disingenuous for people online to be saying, have lessons with me, I will add an extra octave to your voice. No one can add anything to your voice. Your voice is what it is. What someone like myself can help you to do is to explore and to discover, unlock, if you will, notes that were already there, but by virtue of perhaps a technical deficiency, you were unable to access. And again, you might go, well, that's just semantics. Actually, it's really important semantics, because if you think it's about you just being able to, let's say your biology has you, and we're talking in rough language here, has you as a baritone, that's what your biology has set up. And if you buy into the idea that you can become a tenor, then you are going to go in search of the Holy Grail, a pot of gold at the end of a rainbow. It does not exist, and no leprechaun can direct you towards that. It's not real, and you could do yourself a lot of danger going in search of that. However, what we can learn to do is to improve your skills to help you access notes that you may not have been able to prior to learning to sing well, and so that's an important thing. Zane, I'm just seeing quite a few messages going up, guys and gals, in the chat that are needing some attention from Linda, our moderator. Let's be careful in the way we're using our language in the chat. Remember, Voice Essentials is about being encouraging, safe, supportive. We're a family show in the sense that our language needs to be mindful of the fact that we have people of all ages, from the age of 13 all the way through. Please be attentive to that and respectful of each other in that process. Zane, I have a cue about the pinky finger spacing in the first few VE exercises. Is the idea that when we sing songs we should maintain consistent jaw spacing? Great question, Zane, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to clarify this area. Zane, you will have noticed that it is only exercise 1, 2 and 3 where I request or encourage us to sing the activity. So, just so everyone can see, so when I'm doing the exercise, in exercise 1, I have people doing this. Yeah. Now the reason we do that is because I want us to get into the habit of reducing the big white. Most people, when they rock up to a lesson, like straight off the street, first lesson, that is uncomfortable, and I nearly choked on my own tongue. And so what we're trying to do is remove the jaw from it. Now we only do, so we refer to this as neutral jaw. We also, that positions our tongue, it enables us to position our tongue to be sitting up and forward so the tongue's not pulling back. And in exercise 2 specifically, it also helps us to access a better sense of shape in the soft palate. The reason we're doing that is to not cause the jaw to be locked into place, and that is now going to be the position it is always in. But what we are learning to do is to regularly have the jaw in a neutral position, so it's its kind of point of rest. And because at the end of the day, the jaw is going to move, and the higher you go, the more open the jaw may want to become, but we still want to be not flip top head with it. We have an ad here in Australia for I think he was the flip top head guy, Oral-B I think it was, anyway, and it was the flip top head. That's where it comes from. And so but I only request that in 1, 2 and 3 because ultimately it's not about me getting you to lock the jaw into this sort of position so that the jaw never moves, and because that would be ridiculous, right? But it is a really good thing for the first few exercises to just have the position of the jaw be neutral, kind of in a sense remove it from our point of concern. And so having the finger in, there were years gone past where you would purely sing with a pencil, and the reason I like to use the pinky is because firstly your pinky is generally the right width for your jaw, so it's quite personalized, and secondly you're not using some dirty piece of pencil that I would hand you that's been in someone else's mouth. Thirdly, a pencil can't tell you when you're biting. Your finger can tell you when you're biting, so it gives you that physical feedback to tell you to not bite also, because we don't want you biting either. I've just seen the time. Wow, time goes quick. We're going to jump down to Brendan. Actually, we're not, because that's another baritone question. I think we've talked about what's it called? Baritones enough today. PP 777, is the NG tongue position the best exercise for chord closure? It is an exercise for chord closure. It is one of the better ones, but it's not the only one. Can vocal fry as exercise be used for chord closure as well? If we're talking about doing like a certainly vocal fry has the vocal folds pulsing. Whether we'd use those for vocal closure, it's not where I would turn to. It could be a part of a set that a singing teacher might give you. But NG is a good activity for vocal fold closure, as long as you're not overdriving the pressure with that. I'm coming down here. I'm looking ahead for other questions. I'm going to give the last question to Max V, who asks, I like to drink cold things and I like to sing too. Will it affect my singing? Well, yes. I personally think, certainly when I drink a really cold drink or when I drink a really hot drink, I feel like that my larynx, so let me just grab this. So this is, for those of you who have never met him before, this is Lenny. So your esophagus sits, so this is your larynx, this is the front of the person, and this is the back. Sorry, this is the back. And your esophagus runs behind the trachea. And so you've got your trachea, your esophagus, and then your spine. And so you can see that when something of, in fact, before I came on today, for lunch I had like a fruit smoothie. My wife makes me really nice fruit smoothies, very healthy, prior to, for Mondays, typically Mondays, Tuesdays and Fridays. Dear, my life is so predictable. So, and so what happens is when I drink that cold, because I always put ice in it, I like it really cold. When I drink really cold smoothies, I can feel a slight contraction as my warm musculature feels that really cold, icy smoothie slide down behind it. And I think what we want to do is, when we're going to perform specifically or do a really concentrated voice practice, what we want to do is avoid causing the musculature to contract, whether it be in response to something overly cold or something overly hot. And so I always encourage singers to drink, for example, in drinks, drink lukewarm, tepid, is that the right word? Tepid water. So water from, here in Australia, just water from the tap will be fine. On my way to gigs, if I ever forgot my water bottle and had to go and on the way in a servo or a petrol garage, gas garage, what do you guys call that in the US? We call them petrol service stations here. I would, if I pull into a servo and ask for a bottle of water, I'd always ask them to go out the back and grab me one just from the shelf instead of one from in the fridge, because I don't want to have to wait for it to, get warm before I drink it. So that sort of gives you some insight into perhaps the way to go about it. I think we've got to call it a day there. I've got a student in 10 minutes. This one will be in Sydney. Hey, if you're looking for singing lessons, don't hesitate to reach out and let me know. But of course, we do these live hangouts every Monday, not next Monday, but in 2 weeks. Most Mondays Australian Eastern Standard Time at 1 p.m. Hey, if you've enjoyed today's show, hit the thumbs up button. Also, don't forget to if you subscribe to the channel, which I hope you do, hit the white bell icon, because then you'll always receive reminders from the, YouTube gods that via email that we're going live. And that way you will hopefully never miss a show. So good to hang out with you. I hope you're safe wherever you are. I hope you're well wherever you are. And I'm looking forward to catching up with everyone again in a couple of weeks. I'll see you all again soon. I'm Dr. Dan. Sing well.